Hello YouTube. So I thought I would share a little bit of info on this beautiful mock Lego clone kit that I purchased about a month ago and have been putting together pretty much since that day. Just a beautiful, beautiful kit. I thought I would share a little bit of the technical info on it, give you some of the good, the bad, and the ugly with this kit. I will probably end up breaking this into two different little videos so I don't overwhelm anybody. So on this piece, I'm going to try to talk primarily about the technical info, some initial impressions of the overall build, and go into some of the things that I consider the good pieces and good things about this particular kit. For those of you that may not know what this particular kit is, this is the Mould King ISD Monarch, Imperial Star Destroyer Monarch, which is just a beautiful build. It is almost 12,000 parts. It's 11,885 parts in total, and that includes both the main Star Destroyer as well as the three Rebel ships that are also included, the micro builds there, which I think just continue to add some detail to this, so I'm very happy with those as well. This contains, like I mentioned, 11,885 parts. Length from the tip to the back of the engines is almost 4 feet long, or 47 inches in length, and that's, I believe, 118 centimeters. The width of this at the widest point is 28 inches from tip to tip, or approximately 72 centimeters. The height from the top of the bridge shield generators to the bottom is just under 15 inches, or 38 centimeters. And the total weight, which I was a little bit surprised about when I got this thing together, is almost 25 pounds, or 11 kilograms. So this thing is thick. So if you're going to put this somewhere, make sure you've got a shelf that can support a lot of weight, is very wide, and almost 4 feet in length. In my case, this is going to end up in the living room, probably on one of the end tables, just because I don't think there's any place I would trust to put this up very high. Plus, I think the detail of it in general is just so great that I want to be able to look at this thing up close, let others see it, and enjoy it as well. As you can see, this is not an actual Lego clone like a lot of the folks tend to see come out of some of these third-party companies. This is actually based, I discovered, on a mock build, my own creation build that I found on Rebrickable. It turns out that I believe that this Mould King build is based on a user called ONECASE, ONECASE, all one word. You can find the instructions on Rebrickable. And I would recommend that if you do purchase this set, which I think is the best way to buy it, just because of the sheer volume of bricks that you need, unless you happen to have a huge Lego inventory, I would suggest buying the plans. I am going to buy the plans from Rebrickable, even though I've already assembled it and used the Mould King instructions, just in case they are not reimbursing the actual mock creator. Because if this is not his build, it is remarkable how similar it is. I mean, right down to the very particular gold and blue bricks that are on it and the interior structure. They have to be using that set of instructions or something based upon it. So I'm going to support that builder. I believe his instructions are $25 on the site rather. So I would recommend that if you're interested in building this, even if you choose to do it like I did by using the Mould King and the Lego clone bricks, that you still pay, if possible, at least put some support to ONECASE's direction, because if this is based on his, he deserves every penny that he gets. It is just gorgeous. I mean, the greebling and the detail is phenomenal. One thing in particular I like, and I always had a peeve about, on the Lego versions of this Star Destroyer, on their UCSs even, you had a large gap that ran right down the center between the top panels and also on the bottom panels. The solution that they came up with is rather elegant, and I'm just going to kind of close in here. As you can see, they're using nozzle pieces, one on each end of these non-studded bricks, and they essentially use those as gap fillers. And it is such a simple yet elegant design point. and it's built into the actual structure and instructions. And as you can see, for all of the sheer detail on this thing, if you had a Grand Canyon fissure basically running down the center of the entire thing, it would just look completely undone. So I am so glad that they came up with this idea. Maybe this is something that you could actually use on the Lego UCS Star Destroyer kits. I'm not sure if it's too wide or if that's already been done, but if it hasn't been, somebody absolutely should, because I'm sure it would really add just some class to that particular setup. So as you can see here, there is just an incredible amount of greebling along all the sides, and I apologize for the bad lighting, but as you can see, even the bottom has greebling, has detail, and I really like the way they used flat panels to close off and really finish up. So you don't have a lot of studs showing, but you have just enough to really let you know that, hey, you're dealing with a hand-built brick model. So I think that they got just the right amount of finish on this without going too overboard and just turning it into something that looks completely, you know, non-brick built. So one of the pros and the good on this thing is there was not a single missing piece. So almost 12,000 pieces, including the side chips, and I still end up with probably close to 200 assorted bricks left over, as well as just a sheer amount of these additional pieces that are actually used for some of the greebling. Basically, these are like hand tools that are used on there to accentuate some of the areas of the ship. So you end up with a huge amount of those when you're done. You could probably almost do a separate build from those alone. I plan on using a number of them to actually complete and maybe add some additional greebling, just where I could find some spaces, even though I'd be hard-pressed to really find any spots that desperately need it. One thing I will note, this blue energy accents that you see here are not part of the build. Those are something that I added on my own. I tried to emulate the way Lego does this on their UCS Star Destroyer, because if you look at the actual, excuse me, I apologize for the cough, I've got a little tickle in my throat. If you look at the smaller Rebel ships, you can see they are all finished with those small accents to give you that impression of actual, you know, active engines and flight. So it seemed rather strange to me to do all that on the smaller detail ships and not have it on the actual Star Destroyer itself. So I spent a couple of dollars on Bricklink and just bought some trans blue pieces, and they fit directly on the engine sections as you see without any issues. And to me, it really finishes off the rear of the ship. So I would suggest doing that. You don't have to, and it'll look nice just as well without them. But just for my own peace of mind, I did that. One thing that I did like about this entire build is, unlike a lot of the clone kits that are out there, it's not just one simple huge bag of parts and they wish you the best of luck. The way this kit was done by Mould King is they actually followed in Lego's footsteps and labeled batches of the bricks by number. There's a total of 22 bags or 22 sections that actually do correspond to the two large, I mean, just there's about 2,500 steps in total. And like you can see here, it goes from 1 to 22. And they actually do correspond to the sections that you see in the instructions. So it's very easy to not just have to take all of them. I had the AT-AT UCS clone, and it was just a huge 9,000 bricks just sitting there in a big tub that I spent almost as much time sorting and organizing before I could build as it took to actually build the thing. So this to me is a tremendous step forward. Again, lines right up to the corresponding areas in the instruction books and allows you to build very quickly and cleanly. One thing I will note, though, is inside of these main bags you see here, most of them are Ziploc, a few are actually sealed bags, will be a number of smaller bags of parts. The first, I would say almost half, up to about section 10 or 11, all included numbers on those smaller internal bags as well. So if you opened it up, you still knew what section they corresponded to. When I got to the second half of the box, which is actually that Mould King box that you see here on the counter, I found that the internal bags no longer had those numbers. So be very careful if you're one of those people that likes to rip open all the bags and maybe separate them. Be very cautious if you do that, because you may lose the numbers if you do that in the later steps, and you could find yourself doing a lot of sorting and searching to find just the right part. So leave these bags together and unopened until you're ready. That's the best thing I could suggest. You won't regret it. There is a little bit of bleed over in the first few bags. The first couple, 1 and 2, I found a number of bricks that were not used in section 1 that ended up being, part of the section 2. It was not a big deal, but it is just something to be aware of, that while they are broken up and fairly well organized, there is a little bit of plus or minus on the bricks in there, so you will end up using a lot of your leftover bricks probably in the very next section, if not after that. So don't worry if you notice you have a ton of bricks left, but you feel like you've completed a section. That apparently is normal for this entire thing here. As I mentioned, the instructions are very clear and detailed. You have two, excuse my notes there, you have two very nice books, very clearly illustrated, almost 2,500 steps. And the thing in particular I really like is how well highlighted the parts that you're adding in each section are and where they go in there. The only pullback I have on that, so this is listed in my good as well as my bad, is some of these illustrations don't quite give you that angle that you really wish you had to really make sure the part goes where you think it goes. And when you're getting into some of the more detailed sections of the aircraft, that can be a little bit troublesome. So what I ended up doing in some cases is, if I was working on this particular instruction and I couldn't quite see where it went, I'll cheat, read ahead a little bit, and try to find a better image of that particular part. A lot of times you're working on the top, then flipping it over, or vice versa. A lot of times you'll then be able to see that detail you need just to confirm where a part goes. So I never found myself having to tear apart this thing entirely to get back to a good place. So just bear that in mind. So again, great instructions in my mind. The cost for this entire 12,000 piece build to my door in about a week from Wish, which I was a little hesitant about, $289. And there is no way that you could even try to estimate that price per piece would equate to 12,000 pieces. And I understand that it is non-Lego parts, and some people will have an issue with that. But again, this is not a copy of an actual Lego sponsored and purchased build. This is a mock. This is a user's creation, which again, I highly recommend that you do support the original builder ONECASE on Rebrickable. But again, having third-party bricks, especially of this quality, Mould King is very good, and I had no issues at all with any pieces not connecting or staying connected. And for $289, there is no way that I could build this entire set at that cost. There's just no way. Even if I had a large Lego library, I don't think I would have 12,000 spare parts lying around. But just to be safe, I actually did go on Bricklink, and I took the inventory from ONECASE's build of this. And when I did the research, if I had chose to just use North American stores, I would have been paying close to $2,000 to build this entire thing. And that was about the cheapest I could get without having to go to dozens of separate stores, where I would have ended up paying a lot more in shipping. So to get the minimal amount of stores to get all the parts I needed was almost $2,000. If I expanded that search to include every potential seller on the globe, it got down to between $1,500 and $1,600 for the least amount of stores to do that. And again, just way out of my price range. So for $289, I will gladly use these non-Lego bricks to build this, and I will be quite happy, because this thing is going to be sitting on a shelf. It's just going to sit there for the overall beauty that it provides. Another thing I did want to give a quick shout out to is the Mould King included tool. So this is their equivalent of the orange Lego brick separator that we all know and love. So it has the separator, excuse me, section. Also includes some pin push out points, and you can even move a pin in here and actually use this to help extract Technic pins and things like that. And this hammer is a godsend. When you are putting together a lot of these larger panels and bricks, I mean, your fingers would go numb if you were trying to physically just squeeze all these together. You would still have gaps and issues. So being able to use this small hammer to tap those closed was just a godsend. So this is definitely going into my normal rotation of Lego tools just for that reason alone. And just as a note, there were some folks I found online that were complaining that this was breaking their bricks. Unless you took off this plastic cap or rubber cap, which they tell you not to do, you can't damage your bricks if you're not using more than guerrilla force to try to do it. If you're just doing normal human force on it, you're going to be fine. And this tool is definitely going to be used in any of my future builds, Lego or non-Lego. And as an added bonus, it also opened my eyes to a number of other third-party Lego and brick tools that are out there. For example, this particular hammer isn't exclusive to the Mould King. You can actually buy it on Amazon in a variety of small brick tool sets, as well as some other variations on it. There's also like rulers that help you figure out the number of studs and pins very easily. So I ended up buying some of those and using them. But this in and of itself from Mould King, you could build this whole thing stem to stern without any issues whatsoever. So that to me is just another great thing, great tool that came with this product from the third-party vendor there. So I'm going to go ahead and pause at this point and wrap up. Again, one thing I didn't mention were the overall specs. If I didn't mention them, this thing in length is 118 centimeters or 47 inches. Width is 72 centimeters or 28 inches. And the height is 15 inches, 38 centimeters, with a rough weight of approximately 25 pounds or 11 kilograms. And in my case, it took about 60 plus hours to complete the build. But that was me building this at a fairly leisurely pace, an hour or two a day, just doing it in my spare time. And at no point did this really feel like a burden because there's not a lot of repetitive steps. It's just more working on very particular detail, which to me is very engrossing. So I never had an issue where I found myself getting very bored or wanting to stop building this thing. If anything, I got more and more excited as I got through the bags and could finally see the bottom of the overall box. Even the smaller builds, while obviously not as detailed, have a lot of nice detail for their size, and they are intended to be at scale for this Star Destroyer. And one of the things I'll mention in the second section is I also found some additional builders on Rebrickable that are making other smaller scale type ships that are designed to correspond in scale to the size of this Star Destroyer. So I'll share that as well. But again, great build. I hope this answered at least a few of your technical questions. In section 2, we'll go over the few things that I had a little bit of a gripe about and just try to wrap up anything in summary and any items that I plan on doing in the future with it. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to take additional pictures or video or try to answer based on how my build went to help answer your questions. Take care and have a great day, and we'll see you in part 2.